Tonight we're doing two topics. The first one is the Buddhist stories and the Dhammapada. Actually just some nice easy-going stories for a change of pace from all the heavy stuff over the last couple of weeks. Second part, I'm going through the Buddhist meditation, all about Buddhist meditation, and then we'll teach you how to do some meditation and you can try some practical meditation exercises. So next week will be the 10th lesson. I'll be going through the topic. The first part will be how to face death, and then after it will be a topic called the uniqueness of Buddhism. Okay, so let's go into the topic for tonight, Buddhist stories and the Dhammapada. So tonight just stories, you all can relax, hear some of these nice tales from Buddhism. So the first one is called the mustard seeds. This is quite a common story. For most people who have been into Buddhism for quite a while, you probably would have heard this before. But it's good for beginners. So in case you've not come across this story, it's one of the most meaningful stories in Buddhism. So it's a simple story. So it goes like this. Once upon a time, there lived in Savatthi a girl called Kisa Gotami who belonged to the lowest caste. So Savatthi was a place where the Buddha spent much of his time. I think he spent 25 rainy retreats there. So it's towards the west of the area which the Buddha operated in. So there's this girl called Kisa Gotami who belonged to the lowest caste. And as you know from the first lesson about the caste system in India, the lowest caste were very much oppressed. So this girl called Kisa Gotami, despite her poverty, she had kindness and wisdom. A rich merchant, seeing her inner qualities, eventually married her. However, the family of the husband despised her because she came from a low caste. After a few years, fortunately, she gave birth to a baby boy. And her husband's family began to accept her because she provided the husband's family and of course the husband with a son, and her happiness knew no bounds. I guess even in Chinese culture, Indian culture also places a lot of emphasis on having a son. But sadly, the little boy died suddenly one night. So mad with grief, she went to all her neighbors carrying this dead child and asking for help, asking for medicine to bring this baby back to life. However, everyone told her that the baby was dead, but in her grief, in her sadness, she refused to accept this. Eventually, she came across a kind man who asked her to go and seek the help of the Buddha. So she rushed to the Buddha and begged the Buddha to bring her son back to life. The Buddha told her to bring him some mustard seeds, but these mustard seeds must come from a house where no one had suffered the loss of a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend. So this is a picture of Kisa Gotami asking the Buddha for help and the Buddha telling her to go and look for the mustard seeds. So this is a picture of how the mustard seeds look like. So full of hope, Kisa Gotami then went back to the city to look for the mustard seeds. Every house pitied her and every house offered her some seeds. So, but there wasn't a house where no one could say that they had not lost a child, a husband, a parent, or a friend. So unable to find the mustard seeds which she required to give to the Buddha, she left the city in despair and wandered around the countryside. So as night began to fall, from far away, she saw the lights in the city. So from far you can see the lights, at that time they didn't have bulbs, but there were all these fireplaces where they used to cook food to give light for themselves. So all the lights grew bright, and then after a while they flickered, and then as it became time to go to bed, everybody put out their lights, and then the city became dark again. From this, she began to see that it is the nature of our life that we are born, that we live our lives, and then eventually we must die. So same like the lights in the city, they are bright, they flicker, then eventually they have to go out again. So as she suffered the loss of a loved one, so too had everyone else in the city. So she realized that death is common to all, and death is something that we must all face one day. It is something that every one of us must face one day, sooner or later. So finally, she realized this truth, and then she buried her son and then returned to the Buddha. So she took refuge and became one of the disciples of the Buddha, and she eventually attained enlightenment. So the moral of the story is that death is something we must eventually face. This is due to the impermanent nature of our lives. The Buddha advised us to contemplate on death. This serves to remind us that eventually one day we must all die. So facing this truth will enable us to see things more clearly. Because I'm sure you can imagine many people, they refuse to face such things. They don't want to face the truth that they must die, that we must die. So they always avoid these kind of subjects, and then they live their lives as if they are going to live forever. So many of these people, because they take this kind of a view of life, they don't live their lives properly. They do a lot of irresponsible things, they do a lot of bad things, hoping that one day things will turn around, that they have a chance to do good things. But eventually you never know. One day you may just conk off, hit by a car, get a heart attack, whatever the case is, but then you lose a chance to do good things. Then in that case, your life you really do bad things and it's too late to do good things. So to remind ourselves that one day we will eventually die. We don't know when we will die, but we will surely die. So if we know this, we will see things more clearly and we will live our lives more responsibly. And this will enable us to become more calm and peaceful through our practice. If you avoid evil, you do good, you purify your mind, your life becomes more calm and peaceful, and our lives become actually better and better and better if we are able to face the truth of impermanence, to face the truth of death. So this is the first story, the story of the mustard seeds. The next story is this story called Eating Stale Food. Another simple story. So it goes like this. Once upon a time in a city called Badia, a daughter was born to this person called Dhananjaya, the city's treasurer. This daughter was called Visakha, and she grew up to be bright and beautiful, and she had a kind and generous nature. When she became a teenager, some Brahmins saw this girl Visakha and thought that she would be an ideal life for their master called Punya Vadana, the son of a millionaire called Nigara. Accordingly, they made arrangements for Visakha to be married to Punya Vadana. So from the day Visakha arrived in Savasti, the city of her husband, she was kind and generous to everyone in the city and everyone loved her. However, Visakha's father-in-law, Nigara, was unhappy with her because she was a devout follower of the Buddha, whereas the father-in-law Nigara was not. He was a follower of the naked ascetics, and he was a millionaire and very wealthy, but he was not a generous man. So this Nigara looked for a chance to break off the marriage between his son and Visakha because she followed the Buddha, whereas he was a supporter of the naked ascetics. But her conduct was faultless, so he couldn't find any reason for him to break off the marriage with his son. So, naked ascetics. I want to see some pictures of naked men? Okay, get ready. Those of you who are shy, close your eyes. Okay, naked ascetics. And they don't really sense them, so nothing wrong. So you can see all these people even in India nowadays, they're wandering in I think the more remote places are probably not in the cities, but I think in the countrysides. So they are still in existence today, they still practice today. So one more picture, you can see them wandering the streets. So these things still go on, naked ascetics. A lot of supporters, a lot of followers even now. So coming back to the story, one day while Nigara was eating some sweet rice porridge from this golden bowl, a monk entered the house for alms. So Nigara saw the monk, but he continued to eat. He ignored the monk. So Visakha politely told the monk, "Pass on, venerable sir, just carry on. You don't need to stop. My father-in-law is eating stale food." So now Nigara saw his chance to break off the marriage because he thought that her remark brought disgrace to his family. Because he's such a person, but then you tell the monk that he's eating stale food, even though he's actually eating some very nice sweet porridge. So he was furious with this remark. Then he ordered her to be expelled from the house. But Visakha was very calm. She explained that he was actually eating the benefits of his past good deeds, and he was not doing anything to ensure his continued prosperity. So she said, by ignoring the monk and continuing to eat, wasn't Nigara's actions the same as eating stale food? That means he eat the results of his past karma, all his nice food in a golden bowl, but he never offered the dana to the monks, he never offered the food to the monks. So if you don't offer the food to the monks, then you're not creating any more good karma for your future. Right? So Nigara had to admit that she was right, that her explanation was correct. So he asked her to stay back. So Visakha agreed on condition that Nigara invite the Buddha and his monks for a meal and change his ways. With her patience and wisdom, Visakha eventually converted her father-in-law to be a follower of the Buddha. So you don't get angry, you don't throw your temper, you don't talk bad or nastily or sarcastically, but you explain patiently and knowledgeably to people, and then sometimes they will be able to see the truth of what you are saying. So in this case, with her patience and wisdom, Visakha did eventually convert Nigara to be a follower of the Buddha. So the moral of the story is that every single one of us here has accumulated a lot of good karma in the past. If not, we will not be here so comfortably, right? All of you here, every single one of you here has done a lot of good deeds. It's not impossible for you all to be here listening to this Dhamma talk, aircon some more, sitting in such nice chairs. So all of you have done a lot of good karma. But the thing is that let us not just eat stale food. Let us not just enjoy the benefits of our past karma. We should carry on accumulating good karma for the future. And how should we accumulate good karma? The most basic practice is through the practice of dana, sila, bhavana. This is explained more clearly in my little Just Be Good book about dana, sila, bhavana. So dana is simply generosity to help others whenever you can to your capacity, to whatever capacity that you're able to help. You just help. You can help a little, you help a little. If you can help a lot, you help a lot. So it just depends on yourself. The next one is sila, morality, keeping the precepts. By itself, this is even greater than dana. Because you give donations, you give dana, that's fine. But to keep the precepts, that is even better. And the highest, of course, is through bhavana, meditation, mental cultivation. The highest merits that you can acquire for yourself. So don't forget dana, sila, bhavana, to practice this, to accumulate good karma for this, as well as all your future lives. The next story, Crying for the Moon. This is actually my favorite story. It's found in the Dhammapada. But anyway, again, once upon a time in a city called Savasti, there lived a very rich but very stingy Brahmin. This Brahmin had a young son whom he loved dearly. But he was so stingy that even the gold ornaments that he gave his son, he made with his own hands just to save some money. That means he didn't just buy it from the goldsmith or from the shop. He actually made it to save that little bit of money. Unfortunately, his son fell ill one day from jaundice. So his wife pleaded with her husband to get a doctor to help to heal the son. But the father was not happy. He didn't want to pay for a doctor. So what he did was he went around asking for prescriptions so that he can get the medicine, buy the medicine himself, and he can heal the boy himself. That means it's like the gold ornaments. Instead of buying from the shop, he go and make it himself. So he tried to do the same thing. Try to get the prescriptions, go and buy the medicine, and then go and give the medicine to his son. Doesn't want to pay the doctor. So, but the boy became steadily worse until it was too late. With his divine eye, the Buddha, I think he was somewhere around, because like I mentioned, the Buddha spent a lot of time in Savasti. So with his divine eye, with his psychic powers, the Buddha saw that the boy was dying and went to the house for alms. So the boy saw the Buddha and his heart was filled with happiness and joy, and then he died. So as a result of his pure mind, this boy was reborn in the heavenly realm. So goes the story lah. Then after cremating the body, the father was filled with remorse, but it's too late already when the son died. So he went to the burning ground every night to cry for his son. So this is a picture of this funeral pyres, these funeral burning grounds in India. So in India you can see they burn the bodies in these open grounds. And this is a picture of the river Ganges taken when I was there a couple of years ago. For those of you who've been to India, in Vaisali, right? This is the most holy place in India for the Hindus, for the Brahmins. For the Hindus, their objective is to come here to pass away. to die here, and then they are burned here. You can see these are the burning grounds. They are burned here, and then they throw the ashes into the sea. Even for the people who can't come here to die, many of them, they still like to have the ashes thrown into this river so that they believe that they'll be purified, and then they can be reborn in a heavenly realm. So this is a boat here, and then these are the ashes. People are burned here, and then they are thrown into the river. So this river is actually extremely filthy, extremely dirty. But you can see the people here, they swim in the river, they brush their teeth, they bathe, all that. It's quite amazing, and this is going on for the last 4,000 years or so. So, we people, we go there, we see, wow, so dirty, how can these people, it's so absolutely filthy. And then we are warned, if you have a cut, do not put your finger in the water because it's bound to get infected. Because all the dead bodies are thrown in here. But then these people, because they've been doing it for generations, so their body already are immune to all these germs. So in actual fact, they are much, much tougher than us. But certain classes of people are not allowed to be cremated. For example, if a criminal dies, he cannot be cremated. Maybe a pregnant woman, according to the custom. There's a few categories of people. For example, these, like I said, these pregnant women, criminals, they cannot be cremated. What happens is that they tie stones to the bodies, and then they sink it into the river, and then the river will carry the body down to the sea. So these bodies, in fact, when we were there, we saw one of the bodies, because sometimes the ropes break, you see. The ropes which tie the body to these rocks, sometimes they break, so the body floats up. And then you can see just nearby only, we saw this body floated and all that, just floating down. So any of you like to eat Sri Lankan chili crab? I'm sure some of you eat Sri Lankan crabs, right? All big and fat and juicy, right? So, according to some people, the river Ganges, some of these bodies float all the way down to Sri Lanka. So all these Sri Lankan crabs eat all these bodies, that's why they become so fat and juicy. So keep in mind next time you eat these Sri Lankan crabs. Okay, coming back to the story. So after cremating the body, the father, filled with remorse, went to the burning ground every night to cry for his son. From the heavenly realm, the boy saw his father crying at the burning ground. Then he came down to earth and reappeared next to his father in the form of a youth. So the youth, the dead son, came back, right? So the youth started lamenting and crying loudly next to his father. Then the father asked this youth, why is he crying and lamenting so loudly? So the son, in the form of the youth, said that he was crying because he wanted to have the sun and the moon. This picture of the moon. So the father said, why are you crying for the sun and the moon which you cannot get? You are being foolish. I mean, it's silly, right? You go and cry for the sun and the moon. You can't get, impossible to get, no matter how much you cry, you can never get the sun and the moon. Right? So the father said, you are being foolish. Then what did the son reply? The son, in the form of the youth, replied, at least the sun and the moon are there in existence. You are being more foolish because you are crying for your dead son, who is no more, who is not even in existence anymore. So who is more foolish? Of course, even the youth is foolish, but the father is even more foolish to cry over the dead son. So the father realized the truth of the youth's words and asked who he is. Then the youth revealed himself as the father's son, as the story goes. So he told the father, due to his happy thoughts at seeing the Buddha, he was reborn in the heavenly realm. So the next day, offered alms to the Buddha and soon also began to realize the Dharma. So what is the moral of the story? Okay, the moral of the story is actually a bit different from what you read in the Dhammapada. This is my interpretation. The moral of the story is that avoid crying for the moon or the sun or for things which are impossible or not even in existence. What I mean is this: avoid dwelling in the past, either by regretting past mistakes or by basking in past glories. That means a lot of people, right, they always torture themselves, beat themselves up. Before I should have done this, I should have done that. But it's already a long time ago in the past. I know some people, 20 years ago, things still now, they still torture themselves. It's like putting a tape recorder and then you go and torture yourself. So try not to do that. It's totally unproductive, right? So the other thing people like to do is also to relive all their past glories. They did a lot of good things before, and then they like to imagine what they did before. But this is all in the past, so no point to live in the past. So what we need to do is to learn from the past and then move on. The past is no more in existence. So that's the past. Then also avoid dreaming of the future, either by worrying about unforeseen circumstances or by building castles in the air. A lot of people, they worry about unnecessary things. This worry, that worry, everything also worry. But actually most of these worries is unfounded. It's just your mind going wild. The other thing people like to do is build castles in the air, which all of us do. We buy Toto. Then, wow, we already start thinking what we're going to do with the $10 million. Then think about this, think about that. But eventually it's mostly a waste of time, because you will hardly ever get that prize. Even if you get also, you may get something. But the point is that don't go and worry about unforeseen circumstances. Don't worry about the future too much, because it may never turn out to be the way we expect it. And of course, don't go and daydream, build castles in the air. You can live in the present and plan for the future. But don't go and live in the future. It's totally useless. Live in the present, plan for the future. So plan as best as you can, then return to the present. The future, of course, is yet to come into existence. So in either of these two cases, the past is no longer in existence, the future is not yet in existence. So the important thing is that what matters is the present. It's only by living in the present that we can see things more clearly and live our lives to the fullest. Because if you always live in the past, you always dream about the future, that means that you're not living in the present one. You're living in a non-existent land. So live in the present, then we can see things more clearly, then we can appreciate, then we can live our lives more fruitfully. Okay, now we go to the Dhammapada. So those are three quite familiar Buddhist stories. Now we come to the Dhammapada. Some of you may know you can get these free books at Pokaksi or some of these free distribution centers, these small books. It's quite good to read because there's a lot of many valuable lessons in them. Short and sweet, and many are to the point. So the Dhammapada is a collection of 423 such verses attributed to the Buddha and consists of teachings for the benefit of both the Sangha and the laity. So it's actually for both the monks and for the lay people. The Dhammapada is divided into 26 chapters and arranged according to topics. And the first two verses are among the most well-known teachings in Buddhism. So what is the first verse? Dhammapada verse 1. Mind is the forerunner of all evil states. Mind is chief and evil states are all mind-made. If one speaks or acts with the corrupt mind, suffering follows as the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. That means everything we do, all the negative things we do, are all due to the mind. And if we do evil actions, of course, suffering will definitely follow sooner or later. You cannot escape from your negative karma. Sooner or later it will come back to you. The only thing you can do is do more good karma, hopefully to lessen the effects of your negative karma, such that you may even no longer feel the effects of your negative karma if you do a lot of good karma. So Dhammapada verse 2. Mind is a forerunner of all good states. Mind is chief and good states are all mind-made. If one speaks or acts with a pure mind, happiness follows as one's shadow that never leaves. So again, like the wheel of the cart following the ox, our good actions will follow us like a shadow that never leaves. So now we come to this story called Rahula's mirror. As most of you will know, Rahula is the Buddha's young son, which he had before he renounced. So after his enlightenment, the Buddha revisited his hometown of Kapilavastu and reunited with his wife Yasodhara and son Rahula. So Rahula joined the Sangha at the tender age of 7 and he received many valuable teachings from his father. Eventually he also became an Arahant. This is a nice Sri Lankan painting of the Buddha, Yasodhara and then Rahula after they joined the Sangha. So in one of his teachings, the Buddha asked Rahula if he knew what a mirror is for. Rahula, still only 7 years old, was quite smart. So he answered that a mirror is for reflection, to see ourselves in the mirror. So the Buddha replied that yes, that is correct. In the same way, actions of body, speech and mind should be done with repeated reflection. In other words, you just don't anyhow talk, don't anyhow do things, also don't anyhow think. Before that, try to reflect on whether your action of body, speech and mind that you are intending to do is for your own good or not, for the good of others or not. Before one does any action of body, speech or mind, one should reflect whether that action will harm ourselves, will harm others, or both. If so, then it is an unwholesome action. If that action will harm others, ourselves, or both, then that action is an unwholesome action because it will result in suffering. And therefore, that action of body, speech and mind should thus be avoided. Quite simple, right? Just to contemplate, reflect before you do anything negative by action of body, speech or mind. If that action will not harm others, will not harm yourself or both, then we may proceed with that action of body, speech or mind. So in this way, we train ourselves. This is how we train ourselves, by constantly reflecting on our actions of body, speech and mind. So if we do it frequently enough, then this is how we eventually purify ourselves, how we eventually train ourselves. Because I'm sure you know a lot of people, their mouth is faster than their mind. Right? A lot of people are just anyhow talk their mouth off. And then after that, regret. Because you say already, you can't take back, right? You hurt people, you can't take back, right? So these people, they talk first, then they go and think. So it's no good. So this is what the Buddha is trying to say. For all our actions of body, speech and mind, we train ourselves. We think first before we say or do anything, or even to think negative thoughts. Because your negative thoughts eventually also will lead to negative actions of body and speech. So we come to the 10 demeritorious deeds. We covered this last week, but just to go through again to give a better idea of what I'm saying now. So the 10 demeritorious deeds, the first group are the bodily actions of killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. So this is quite clear. Actions of the body which harm others. The next group, verbal actions. So the verbal actions of lying, slandering, harsh speech and gossip harm others as well as ourselves. So these are things which we should avoid. And the next group, the group of mental actions. Covetousness, you want this, you want that, everything also you want. Ill will, wrong view. Wrong view means basically you don't really accept karma, you don't really accept the principle of cause and effect, you don't really accept rebirth, things like that. So these are the 10 demeritorious deeds broken up into the bodily actions, verbal actions and mental actions. There's a 10 demeritorious deeds, there's also the 10 meritorious deeds. 10 meritorious deeds, there's the other side of the coin, the opposite side. For bodily actions, what are they? Compassion, to relieve the suffering of others as and when we can. Generosity, to help others to whatever we can. Self-control, of course, like I said, not to just anyhow do things, but to have an element of self-control. Think first before we do anything negative. So the first group, bodily actions, compassion, generosity, self-control. Self-control here, I guess, also means that you don't give in to all your desires, like the other side of the coin is sexual misconduct. So you don't anyhow do sexual misconduct. Have some self-control. So verbal actions, practice truthful speech, kind speech, pleasant speech, meaningful speech. Truthful speech, quite obvious, don't tell lies. Kind speech, don't go and hurt people. Pleasant speech, don't use harsh speech. Meaningful speech means don't just gossip, talk rubbish and all that. Try to practice more meaningful speech. And of course, the highest form of meaningful speech is to talk about the Dhamma, maybe not in Buddhist terms, but in general terms, to share with other people whenever you have the opportunity. The next group are the mental actions, sympathetic joy. When people are happy, when people are successful, you rejoice with them, rejoice at their happiness. Loving kindness, metta, the desire for all beings to be well and happy, free from physical and mental suffering. And of course, the last one is to practice right view, practice according to the Dhamma. Okay, so these are the 10 meritorious deeds divided into bodily actions, verbal actions and mental actions. So the point is that it is clear everything stems from the mind. Everything is from the mind. Whatever we think eventually is translated into actions of speech and body. So how do we train our minds? This is the key. Let's look at the Noble Eightfold Path again. Noble Eightfold Path, right speech, right action, right livelihood, morality, the foundation of everything. Right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, which is mental development, and right understanding, right thought, wisdom. So this is where we train our minds, through mental development, through right effort, through right mindfulness, through right concentration. So again, morality is the foundation of everything. And then after we have developed a certain amount of morality, then we can go on to mental development to train our minds, which is the topic of the second part of tonight's lesson, meditation, how to train our minds.